Okay, do you want to get rid of negative emotional charges, feel better, think faster, get more clarity, be more efficient in what you do? Well, then you need some supernoetics piloting. It's unequaled in its ability and effectiveness to transform how you think and how you feel. For one thing, it's founded on sound scientific principles. What is the mind for? I am probably the first person to actually identify what I've called the mind's number one algorithm. I mean, what the mind is really doing. What's it for? You know, we all know we've got one. And by the way, you're not a mind, you're not a brain, you're not a mind, you're not your emotions. You are a great non-material consciousness, awareness, which is operating via a mind and via a brain. You're interacting with the physical, but you are not any of those things. Anyway, what's the mind for? We all have one. Well, this is what it's doing basically. It's scanning the present time environment, looking for cues and signals, which it compares to past memory and experience. Doesn't matter whether it's learned or taught. Experience, it's something you've experienced or something people have told you, you now remember. But using that, then you make a prediction about the likely futures that are going to come from the present situation, and then choose a behavior which will give you the best possible outcome in these particular circumstances. Now, I could talk for a whole hour about what that algorithm means. But the one thing I want you to take away is that it only operates, I mean, the mind is perfect in that it does what it should do, the way it's taught to do it, the way it's supposed to do it. But it's very susceptible to bad data. If memory is crap, memory is muddled or lost or corrupted, like computer files, it's going to come up with the wrong answer. If you've been taught the wrong thing, you went to school and you were taught the only way to solve a domestic situation is take a gun and shoot the bitch. That's not good. I'm joking, of course. They don't teach that at school. But you know what I'm saying. You were taught that. You learned that. Maybe you learned it from a papa who was an extremely violent man that spent most of his time packing a gun. And every time he didn't like something, he'd shoot the gun off and occasionally come very close to hitting his wife in the head. So that was a learning. Do you see? It wasn't necessarily an experience. But one way or the other, the memory files are corrupted. That's what the number one algorithm is vulnerable to, and that's why the mind gets wrong answers. And that's why our supernoetics piloting is brilliant, because we go and track down those bad learnings from the past and purge them, and get them into view so that we can work with them. That's the sort of hidden 9/10 of the iceberg, if you like, all the troubles down there. Sometimes people call it the subconscious. I don't think it matters what you call it. But anyway, that's evolving what I've called the mind's number one algorithm. Now, I've also identified what I think is mind's number two algorithm, which is to assign values and importances. In a given situation, certain things are valuable and other things are not necessarily valuable. For example, we have certainly the British principle was often well repeated and well described, and the soldiers and sailors well understood it in our empire days, which is women and children first. And that was an automatic set of values, women and children first. Because it's no good, if the warriors, the menfolk, just look after themselves, but they lose their procreational future. I mean, that's what the women and children are. They're their future. So it's a bit pointless, warriors preserving themselves and losing their tribal reproductive potential. Do you see? So that's a good example of values that do count. The point is that you can only assign values in any worthwhile sense when you really understand what's going on. If you don't know how life works, how love works, you don't know what's important about the kind of food you eat as opposed to the kind of food we're being persuaded to eat, you're going to make bad decisions all the way along the line because you're going to give bad values. And there are a lot of bad values out there about love, let's face it. There's a popular misrepresentation that the sexiest girls are the ones with big titties and big teeth and blonde hair. They're the ones you want, they're gorgeous. But we all know that a lot of them are airheads, or they're on the make, or gold diggers anyway, so that would be a poor value judgment. For the women, they're often, the men are supposed to be hunks, big, muscular, strong things that will raise them up in his arms, and she's wearing these floaty dresses in the sunlight and unreal kisses. These are all very unreal values about what you should be looking for in a partner. You want loving warmth and dependence, wisdom. These are far more valuable than how a person looks. So the whole point is that you can't make wise choices in either your number one algorithm or number two algorithm without good information. Particularly, as I explained, the first algorithm will break down on bad information. So we need good information. Now, most of us go through life not really knowing what we're basing this on. I said in another talk in this series, you need to know what's important to your lover, your partner, or your spouse. And that means ask them. You're going to ask them to tell you. You can't assume that the other person knows what you think and what you feel and what you like. So it's a very important sharing for love and lovers that you explain your likes and dislikes. Once you get to those, then of course it's possible to design behaviors and words and exchanges around this, knowing that you're getting it somewhat right. You're close to what the person likes or wants, if you like. Now, when we're trying to resolve conflict, and healing love, we're talking about conflicts. Good, happy love doesn't need healing. So by definition, we're looking at conflictive situations and how to get out of them. There are certain, so shall we say, time-honored ways of solving things. When two people are in conflict or in dispute, doesn't matter whether it's one country and another country, or it's a man and a woman, or just parent and child, whatever, there's conflict going on. There are some traditional ways of dealing with this. Number one would be appeasement. Now, appeasement simply means you give in. You give them whatever they want. Give it to them just as long as they shut up and stop complaining. You give them what they want. But that's not a very satisfactory solution. It's a win-lose, really. The other person wins, but you lose. You don't get what you want, and it's likely to lead to frustration and anger and resentment. So it's not a happy outcome. So appeasement isn't a good handling for it. Now, another time-honored way of dealing with it is force. You just grab what you want. I don't care. Shut up. Take what you want, whether it's something metaphorical or a physical object. But again, force doesn't work because it's a win-lose or a lose-win. One person is going to win, but the other person, by definition, loses. And that person is going to carry a lot of bitterness and hatred. And you're going to be very lucky if they don't hit back at you at some time in the future. They're going to get back at you because they're going to want revenge. So force isn't a good solution either. Now, what about the time-honored one of compromise? Everyone knows about that. Compromise is the way to deal with things, isn't it? Well, no, not actually, because compromise is actually a lose-lose. It means you both give up something, neither are particularly happy, neither have the sense of a win or something accomplished. Most often, both parties are carrying a sense of aggrievement and loss. So that's not so good either. There is a fourth way of dealing with this, and this is the supernoetics way, and I'd like to explain it to you. It's the integration of ideas path. There is a way where both people get what they want in a positive sense, not giving up something like in compromise, but by both getting what they want. But for this to come about, each party has to be clear about what they do want. And this is back to valuations and importances. What is a person's values and what is important to them? So to do this, we have to have a method of finding out the other person's point of view. And we do this using what we call the magic questions, 4 magic questions. These were developed back in the 70s, I think it was the 70s, by a guy called Charlie Broadhead. And their sort of, conflict resolution principles work very successfully. We've co-opted them in supernoetics, because to be honest, I can't see any better. It's just completely logical that this is the way you would do things. We approach life in various ways, but there are 4 sort of fundamental dynamics, if you like, that we see in life. What should be done that wasn't done? What was done that shouldn't have been done? What part should we have played in that? In other words, what should we have done to participate? And what should we have not done, but that we did do? So these are pretty fundamental dynamics if you think about it. These are differences in approach and differences in opinion. So this is where Charlie Broadhead scored with his 4 magic questions. You simply sit down the conflictive parties. If you haven't got a coach or a cybernetics pilot or someone to help steer you, you can do it for yourselves. You just have to be respectful of each other's answers and not argue back and restart the conflict. You've got to listen. Remember, what we're trying to do here is gather information. We're trying to understand the other person's values and importances. That's what the conflict is based upon. You're not understanding something about them that's valuable, important to them, which is what's upsetting them, in exactly the same way as they're not getting something that's meaningful and important to you, but they're not listening, they're not getting it, they're not hearing you. Both are guilty of this. So providing you're willing to listen, a party of 2 can sit down on their own over a cup of coffee. Don't recommend a glass of wine because we don't want alcohol to start altering a person's emotional responses. I mean, you could say coffee does, of course. It'll jazz people up slightly. Listen, let's be safe and don't do anything. Just a glass of water or some herb tea or fruit juice, just to play it safe, okay? But it's just questions that we share. So you speak to the other person, and if you're going to be the leader, okay? You're the big man, or you're the mother goddess. You're the big responsible party that's doing this on behalf of you both. So you would say to the other person, what did I do that wasn't all right? Now, don't say wrong. You know, when you turn it around, you don't want to say to a person, well, you did so-and-so wrong. That's too critical and far too judgmental. Just be gentler and say, that it wasn't okay. Maybe, implying it just didn't work, whether it was wrong or not. So, all right, so what did I do that wasn't okay? And they answer, honestly, hopefully. And then you say to them, well, what did I fail to do that I should have done? So it's the 2 sides of the coin. Do you see? So you did something you shouldn't have as far as they're concerned. But also you didn't do something you should have as far as they're concerned. And that would probably have made it all right. You didn't show me enough love and respect. That's what you did wrong. So what should I have done? Well, you should have held me in your arms, given me a kiss and said, look, I forgive you. Or, whatever that person sees as appropriate. And then in respect of the same conversation and conflict, for yourself, what did you do in regard to me that really wasn't okay? And make them be honest. There's got to be an answer. And then the final 4th question is, what, in respect of me, what did you fail to do that you should have done? So it's each person, right? It's that person's point of view about what you shouldn't have done and what they should and shouldn't have done. But now it's your turn. So you're going to say what you think the other person should and shouldn't have done and what you think you shouldn't have done. Okay, so you can follow the questions there. You just turn it around, right? In respect of you, what did I do that was not all right? And so on. Just go through the reverse of the questions. You can figure out the actual wordings. If you're being a coach on this and using these in a coaching situation, you need to take each person in turn. So say you've got Mary and Jim. You'll talk to Jim and say, Jim, what did Mary do that was not all right? Okay, Jim, what did Mary not do that she should have done? And Jim, in respect of Mary, what did you do that wasn't all right? And in respect of Mary, what did you not do that you really should have done? It's gentle and, forthcoming and yielding like that. You're not, it's not aggressive. What did you do wrong? You've got to get rid of that kind of communication. It's terribly destructive anyway, but it's not going to work in healing a lifetime of love. Anyway, then you go to Mary and say, Mary, in respect of Jim, what did you do that wasn't good? And what did you fail to do that you should have done? And then what did Jim do that was really not okay? And what did Jim fail to do that you think he should have done? So what you're doing is going backwards and forwards, and you're harvesting answers and values. And trust me, that at some stage the lights will go on and the person will realize that they were making impossible demands of the person. They were in direct conflict with something about the person's life, something about the person's values, that they weren't easily going to give up. They weren't just going to lie down and roll over just because that's what you wanted to do. This is in conflict with the person's deep desires or deep values. You're on a hiding to nothing there. So, it's smart. And this is why we call it the integration of ideas, by the way, because you're bringing the two sort of conflictive sets of values and ideas and behaviors, you're bringing them into view and integrating them so that when all said and done, if all parties understand each other and love and care about each other, then all the parties can make some adaptations that will enable you to give what the other person wants, but without surrendering, like in compromise, yeah? If you're a coach or in a counseling situation, you've been piloting, then we use these as clean-up questions too, right? If you've been sitting through a discussion session, maybe it got heated partway through, it all ends up lovey-dovey, and that's great. But you can say to the person, this is you as pilot, now in the time that we've been talking, did I do something that wasn't okay? In the time that we've been talking, did I fail to do something that you felt I should be doing? And in this situation, the session that we've just been through, did you do something that wasn't okay? You see, you're making demands of the person that they share. They may also, if they're honest, realize that their participation wasn't 100%. Well, it's good for them to understand and yield up in that sort of honesty, because they'll get more from it. And then finally, of course, the final question, did you fail to do something that you shouldn't have done, and so on. Very powerful questions. They are truly magic, because people will transform in amazing and healing and dramatic ways. These are terrific questions that Charlie Broadhead came up with, and I would ask you to learn them and use them in any sort of situation where there's conflict, it's been brewing, or when you're trying to heal something, earlier in life, a situation with somebody who maybe isn't there, you can still do it when they're not there. In respect of Jim, you haven't seen Jim for 20 years, but in respect of Jim, what did Jim do that you think wasn't okay? And you sound off a little bit. And what did Jim fail to do that he should have done? And that gives you a chance to sound off as well. But then the killer question is, in respect of Jim, what did you do that was not okay? And what did you fail to do that you should have done? If you can get the person to be just open and honest on those steps, trust me, there's terrific healing to be had. It's wonderful. All right, one last little treat. Charlie also suggested that you could use these questions last thing at night. What happened today that wasn't all right? You're lying in bed just going to sleep. Ask yourself this question and answer it for yourself. And what failed to happen today that should have happened? You wished if this had only happened, things would have been so much better. And then again, you go through your honesty steps. Question 3 and 4 are the honesty ones. What did I do today that really wasn't good, wasn't okay? And what did I fail to do today that I know in my heart that I really should have done? These are healing bedtime questions. If you've got the guts and the daring, use them on yourself, and I wish you well with them. Thanks for listening.